Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hello, can you hear me? Test, test. Good morning, and welcome. Would you please rise in body or spirit, and join in singing number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are, number 188. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, 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 whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, 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 whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me a little better now. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. I am Carter Smith, and I have the honor of serving this congregation as the Acting Director of Music Ministries. And this morning, I'm joined by the Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti, our Senior Minister, Reverend Theresa Rohlck, our Minister of Pastoral Care, Stella Anderson, our Director of Spiritual Growth and Development, Allison Halerz, our Pianist-in-Residence, Mike Halerz, our Technology Consultant, and by Leah Tame, our song leader this morning. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all who may be new to this congregation or still deciding if this might be your spiritual home. If you would like to learn more about our community, you can join us for a newcomer welcome directly following the service in the Jackson Chapel, which can be found on the right side of the hallway as you exit the sanctuary through these double doors. There you'll have a chance to meet staff and congregants, ask questions, and give us a chance to get to know you a little more deeply. If you are new and joining us via live stream this morning, we hope that you will take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat so we can greet you and welcome you to this community. We also encourage you to visit our website and take our newcomer survey at UUAA.org/newcomer survey so we can learn more about you and get you more deeply connected. This morning, we especially want to extend another warm welcome to the River of Grass UU congregation from Sunrise, Florida, who are joining us virtually this morning. It is such a blessing that we are able to join in community with other UU congregations, both near and far, throughout these summer months. And we're so excited to have River of Grass joining with us this morning. I would encourage those of you from our community who are joining virtually this morning to join me in welcoming our guest by putting a friendly word of welcome in the chat. This upcoming week marks an exciting time in the life of our congregation as we will host the Association for Unitarian Universalist Music Ministries, or AUM, for their annual conference. Yeah. This conference was originally scheduled to occur in July of 2020, and we are so excited that we can help AUM to finally come back together. Yeah. And this morning, we are joined by members of AUM's Music Leadership Certification Committee and are very happy to welcome them to our service this morning. So if you are around our facility this week and notice a few new faces, I would encourage you to offer a word of greeting and welcome to our guests for the next few days of professional development and fellowship. If you are interested in attending any of the conference sessions, please register for the conference beginning on Wednesday of this week. And next Sunday, conference attendees will join us for a special Sunday service that will feature many of the music professionals that are in attendance for the conference. Our Upholding Our Values capital campaign is quickly coming to a close at the end of July. Thank you to everyone who has already pledged their support for this effort. If you have not had the chance to pledge yet, it's not too late. While the official end of the campaign is July 31st, we will continue accepting pledges after that time. And for more details on the campaign and pledging, please visit uuaa.org/capitalcampaign. Over the past several years, we've been trying to improve assisted listening in the sanctuary, but all of the options have been too expensive and involved too much construction. Today, technology advances and recent upgrades to our AV system have allowed us to launch a new assisted listening system that will support the widest range of needs, both now and in the future. All it takes is an app on any smart device connected to our guest Wi-Fi, anywhere in the building, to get audio directly to your Bluetooth hearing aids. The system also supports T-coil hearing aids as well as headphones or earbuds. We even have ready-to-use devices that you can borrow during a service. Try it out, spread the word, and see Mike or our other AV team members if you need any help. This is one more way that we're able to show our commitment to accessibility and radical welcome. Yeah. And now I would invite you to find a place of centering and grounding as we move deeper into our shared time together. We are gathered for worship.
Good morning. Is there anything cuter than a baby sneeze? Each week, we begin our time together with the lighting of the chalice, one of our most cherished rituals. Our chalice is a reminder of our connections to one another in this community, our connections to Unitarian Universalists all over the world, and our connections to our living tradition. This morning, I would like to invite any of the youngest members of our community, I see some sitting right here, and anyone that's scattered around, to come and help us light our chalice, to help us usher in the spirit of community. And if you are a child or a teenager who has a question that you haven't been able to turn in yet, please bring it up to me now. Reverend Theresa will be our helper this morning. Thank you. That's okay. Together, let us say, we light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. Yes. Thank you. Any other questions from our younger members? All right. Everyone may return to your seats now. Thank you. Another way that we begin our time together is by reciting the words of our covenant. As UUs, we are not bound by a single creed, but by the promises we make to one another about how we will be together as a faith community of seekers committed to love and justice. So whether you are joining us for the first time or whether you have these words memorized, please join me as we say together, "The spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another." Thank you.
Good morning. So for those who may not be familiar with the framework or approach that we're taking today, it's one of our question box services today. And what that means is that both the younger members of our community and adult attendees, those who've gathered, have the opportunity to submit some questions. I do not know what any of these questions are in advance, and I take a few minutes to create reflections related to the questions that have been submitted. I'll say a word in a few minutes about how our adult and online participants will be joining us in this today. But we're going to start out first with the kids' questions, and the kids had a little bit of time before the start of today's service, as you saw, to think of their own questions that they might want to ask. So I randomly select these, and I have not seen any of these in advance. And I also want to thank the kids for taking a little bit of time to come up with their own questions, things that they're wondering. So not having seen any of these, let me pick a couple. What do you think is beyond the earth? Okay, they mean this, they've clarified unknown animals and creatures maybe. That's a very good question. So, this was in the news, a little bit of this was in the news this week about the field of astronomy, about stars and planets. Our nation just launched it last December, but it became active this week. The Webb telescope, an amazing human accomplishment. And this telescope is producing gorgeous, beautiful images of galaxies that are far, far away, and we're able to see light from galaxies and stars that are, they say, the light that was created 13 billion years ago, which is amazing. And if you haven't seen these photos, I would encourage you to ask one of your parents to show you, because it's one small bit of the sky, and each one of those is a galaxy, and a galaxy is out, like the entire Milky Way is a galaxy, and we're just one small bit of the Milky Way, and there are all these galaxies everywhere. So people estimate that there could be billions and billions of galaxies all across the universe. We're not even talking yet about multiverses. I just saw the Doctor Strange movie last night, so that's also very fresh in my mind. And there's robust theory, a quantum theory about multiverses. But the one we know of, for sure, has billions and billions of galaxies. So I would say if we know that there's life on this planet, and we're just one small tiny bit of one galaxy, and there's billions and billions of more galaxies, I think the chances are really high that there's some kind of life out there. Now, whether they look, now I know if you watch the space shows, the science fiction shows, they make all the aliens look like us. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know what alien life might look like. It may be very different from the life that we're familiar with, but I bet it'll be interesting. And I bet there's everything from very simple little cells living out there, the way we have amoeba and singular celled creatures, to complex beings like us. I'm sure that probably exists as well. Thank you, that's a great question. What's my favorite color? I like purple. I'm not wearing any purple today. Well, my daughter would point out, she's here somewhere, that I also like blue, so I've got some blue on. Okay, 2 people were wondering my favorite color. That was easy. Can another parent help translate this? Good. Okay, see if you have any luck with that. We'll just keep going. We'll keep going. Okay, what's my favorite animal? I have lots of favorite animals. Okay, I really like rabbits because they're very gentle. I like ducks. Ducks are a very community-oriented animal. Snakes are very powerful. I used to be afraid of snakes. I'm not as afraid of snakes anymore, and they're very, very interesting animals. You have a snake in your garden? A garter snake. That's amazing. That's beautiful. And I'd say also tigers are real. I've been interested in tigers lately. Tigers are also very interesting. Okay. Any luck? No luck on the deciphering. That's okay. Okay. And I think I already answered this. Okay, so unless we have luck with the deciphering. Oh, yes, okay. This is actually a very thoughtful question. Thank you for the help deciphering that. It's about poverty. So why do people who are poor, okay, so there's a number of ways we could interpret this. Like maybe, why don't they have a home, or why don't they have enough food to eat? So let me answer, I'm gonna answer the question in generally about poverty. It's unfortunately probably always been the case as human beings that there are people in our history some who've had more and others who've had less. We Unitarian Universalists believe that everybody has inherent worth and dignity. So that calls us to like a little bit of a higher standard about how we encounter things like that kind of difference. That some people have a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of material things, and some people have very little or maybe even none. And our calling as Unitarian Universalists is to try and care for the least among us and try and make their situation better. So a lot of us in our community, we do social justice work and we do things to help alleviate poverty, to help alleviate crises and inadequate affordable housing, hunger relief, all kinds of really good things. So poverty exists. It's probably always existed in the history of people, and it is something that we are committed to trying to make better in the ways that we can. And thank you for caring about that, because I know my own kids care about that question as well. Thank you so much. Those are the questions from our kids for today. We're going to join together in singing them out. And we're going to sing Where You Go, I Will Go, Beloved. Everyone is invited to join in as we sing that song together.
Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine.
Well, if it's your first time joining us for a question box, welcome. You got to see a little bit of that in action. As you were entering the sanctuary this morning, if you're joining us in person, you were offered a small slip of paper and a pencil on which you can write down a question. We're going to take a few minutes now to give you a little bit of time to do that. And same for those joining online. You can put your questions into the chat. You'll see on the paper form, we ask that you indicate your name, contact details. Same for chat. If it's not apparent from your handle who's the author is, please include your name with your question. I don't actually read the names when I'm offering a question, but it helps us in case we want to circle back to anybody specifically with more information or follow up on something. The simple rule, or I guess guideline for thinking of questions, I encourage you to think of something that feels active or alive for you personally. So as opposed to like a question about other people or that other people might have, what about you? Where are you on your journey of being human today? What are you actively wondering about? What are you wrestling with? Those are the juicy questions that we want to be able to dig into. And your offering of one of those real active questions for you is a gift to all of us. So please take a moment, and we invite you to write down some questions. If you need a pencil, the ushers have pencils. You can raise your hand. If you need a form, they have those too. Once you've finished the slip of paper that you've got, you can fold it in half, hand it to the end of the aisle, and the ushers will collect them. Thank you.
If you need a few more moments to finish writing, please take your time to do that and indicate to an usher, and they'll pick up those papers. Each month, usually on the first Sunday of the month, we dedicate our offering to a particular organization in the community, and we call this Sharing the Collection. And each month, usually on the third Sunday of the month, we take a moment to highlight one of the many groups that are working on social justice issues in this congregation. And we call that our Social Justice Connection. And in a happy coincidence of scheduling, both of those things are happening today. On Sharing the Collection Sundays, someone from the receiving organization speaks to us about their organization. Now, have you ever wondered how those groups are chosen? Well, even if you have never wondered about it, it's a good thing to know and understand, as it reflects how this congregation, how you all, it reflects how we are committed to making a difference in the community through financial support to groups doing amazing work, all of whom are aligned with our UU values. Choosing who gets the offering once a month is the job of the Sharing the Collection team. So today, our Social Justice Connection highlights the Sharing the Collection team. And I'm pleased to introduce the group's co-chairs, Janet Duncan and Terry Madden. When they are done, they will introduce the month's recipient for the collection. So please help me welcome Janet and Terry to the pulpit.
Hello, my name is Jan Duncan, and I co-chair the Sharing the Collection program with Terry Madden. I also served as chair of the committee for 2 years prior to Terry joining the team. During the 2 years, I was supported by dedicated committee members Casey Jackson, Glenn Kime, Jim Marks, Mary Phelps. Currently, we are supported by Fran Lyman, Charlene Manji, Diane McCarthy, and Dixie Hibner. The Sharing the Collection program is a long-serving and highly valued UUAA program. On the first Sunday of each month, UUAA donates our weekly collection to a select nonprofit community service organization. Sharing the Collection gives us all an opportunity to provide financial assistance to nonprofit service organizations in Washtenaw County. They do important work in our community. I joined the Sharing the Collection team in 2018 and stepped into the leadership role in February of 2020. Thanks to our talented UUAA administrative team, our Sunday service collection went online, enabling us to collect funds for our local nonprofits during 2020 and 2021. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, I've been impressed with our Washtenaw nonprofits as they adapted their services to meet the needs of our community during these difficult times. Through your generous donations, we were able to support 12 nonprofit organizations each year as they provided support for housing, food distribution, literacy, health, and mental health services. The UUAA Sharing the Collection program collected over $20,000 in 2020 and $21,000 in 2021.
Good morning. It seems appropriate on Question Box Sunday I begin with a question. Why should we share the collection? Well, for me, the greatest selling point for having for the last 16 years a Sharing the Collection practice at the UUAA is the return, the benefits we get back. Through Sharing the Collection, we extend a helping hand into the community and share in the missions of the nonprofits we select as recipients. Last month, at our June 12th Sunday service, Perry Stone Palmquist, Executive Director of the Student Advocacy Center, told us what one of their students said regarding the Student Advocacy Center's experience, his experience, and in particular about his mentor. He said, "I didn't want to go to school. It just felt like a dead end for me. But when I met you, you kept me on track because you constantly asked me about school. And it showed me that people really wanted to see me graduate and make something of myself. I wanted to stay out of jail. With you around, you kept me on track. Well, the executive director trusted enough to tell us that story because she knew we would rejoice with her. This year, through sharing the collection, we are part of the Student Advocacy Center and each of our 11 other monthly recipients' efforts and achievements. Looking forward from August to December, we will be offering an opportunity through our collections to reach out into the community to share the mission of the National Alliance on Mental Health, Dawn Farm, which helps people with addiction build a recovery support system, the Women's Center of Southeast Michigan, L's Place, which lends support to grieving children who are coping with the death of a significant person in their lives, and the Liberty Club, which helps adults with disabilities. We are looking forward to supporting them as we learn about their missions and their stories. Now let's transition from social justice connection to our actual sharing the collection. Today it is our privilege to recognize Our House, the Sharing the Collection recipient for July. Our House was selected for its worthwhile mission of providing foster care for young people who are transitioning from foster care to adulthood. To learn more about Our House, let's give a generous welcome to the Executive Director, Natasha Doan-Motsinger, and Coordinator Volunteers, Mary Buzzard of Our House.
Good morning. My name is Natasha, and I'm the Executive Director for Our House.
And my name is Mary. I'm the volunteer coordinator with Our House. We are really, really thankful to be here today, to have been invited, so that we can share with you all a little bit about our history and our mission. So Our House started in July of 2012, so we are actually celebrating our 10-year anniversary, thank you. So it was started by a group of volunteers that they had the goal of just helping young people between 14 and 26 to successfully transition from foster care into adulthood. So at the core of this mission was mentoring, matching each of our young participants with a caring adult in the community to support, guide, and care for them while they work towards independence.
In the last 10 years, since that group of people came together in someone's backyard and decided to start running the organization, we have grown considerably. We went from having an all-volunteer board to today having 15 staff. All of that has been since 2018, actually. That's when we received a grant that helped us to grow. This last fall, we actually launched our most recent program, which we call Mosaic, which is an independent living program for youth who are actually aging out of the foster care system. We have welcomed a number of teens into our houses this year, and we continue to grow. We've added, 3 more in the last month alone. We opened our housing programs in an attempt to help the young people in our organization to avoid some of the worst outcomes that can happen for youth as they age out of the foster care system. Without intervention, youth exiting care are more likely to end up homeless, pregnant before the age of 21, diagnosed with significant mental health or physical health disorders. In fact, PTSD for foster youth is higher than even for combat veterans, and only 20% of youth in care actually receive the care they need to help overcome those challenges. Foster alumni are also less likely to achieve high school diplomas or higher education. Our house programs, we have a demonstrated efficacy of actually making a difference in those areas. Our supportive programs, along with mentoring, as Mary mentioned, which is the foundation of everything that we do, we offer supportive housing, and we also offer a lot of financial supports because we intend to be the safety net that a lot of families provide to their children as they're growing through that transitional age of young adulthood. So we do have financial support programs, we do a lot of life skills and community building events, and we offer mental health support through financial and ongoing events throughout our year, every year. Yep.
So yeah, like Natasha said, we're growing really, really fast, which is amazing. So we are always looking for volunteers, specifically those who are interested in mentoring our young people. So currently we have a high need for mentors of color and those who identify as male. And we're going to be hanging out after the service. So if you would like to hear more about just what we do, if you're interested in volunteering in any way, we would really love to hang out and chat with you.
Thank you again for inviting us. We're really excited to learn more about your lovely community. As we did research after we were invited to come speak, we kind of both realized that we were looking for this kind of place to visit. So thank you guys for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you both. If you think about the amazing work that this organization does, that our house does, and what a difference it makes, how much it matters, think now about how we as a community can help support that. And any amount that you can give, even the smallest amount, will make a difference and will help support that kind of work. So today, our offering is going to be received for our house. You may give online at uuaa.org/giving. You can text UUAA to 73256. And of course, you can leave cash or a check in the baskets. The ushers will now come forward and receive the offering. We will gratefully accept your gifts. Thank you, Allison, and thank you all for your generous gifts. I invite the ushers to come forward. And if you will, in body and spirit, as you are able, rise, and we will dedicate our offering. So please say with intention these words that you see on the screen or in the order of service. To the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings. Thank you, and you may be seated.
Well, welcome to part 2 of answering questions. And thank you for everybody who participated, including online, if you participated. We're going to take a question first from an attendee in the sanctuary. What are the most effective and important ways to try and build community? That's an excellent question. So this is the thing that we as a society, as a nation, are getting most off track about, in a way. You know, the fissures in our culture and in our broader society bring alive the fact that we have either lost some skillfulness or forgotten how to be together with others across difference. So what does that look like on a practical, lived way? We all know this. I mean, I'm stating kind of what we've all probably not just personally experienced, but regularly observed. It looks like invective, being hurled at other human beings. It looks like otherizing, making other people out to somehow be demons or evil or inherently bad. It looks like cutting people out of our hearts, of our circle of care, out of even our interest level, not even interested in knowing more about certain groups of people, their life experiences, their perspectives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this might sound on the overt level like I'm talking about the fissures in our society around conservative and progressive or liberal on the political spectrum, and certainly that is true, and it is not only true about that level of fissure. We need only look to potentially your workplaces, your other community organizations that you're a part of, maybe even our own community here. The pattern that has occurred at the national level, most dominantly along conservative, progressive, liberal, that type of split, it exists everywhere, and that pattern is replicated at every level, including the level of individual families, including amongst communities or subgroups where people mostly agree with one another, even with most agreement, let's say 80%, which is far greater than what most average Americans, how we relate to one another. That even in communities where you mostly agree on everything, these same patterns are being replicated. Invective, otherizing, cutting people out, discarding other human beings, demonizing other human beings, making them out to be the problem, not us. Other people are somehow the problem. So this is not the basis for building community at all. It's not even the basis for building a society. And insofar as these dynamics continue to be profoundly ingrained into US-based culture and society, I would posit that our society is increasingly becoming untenable. It is not possible to have a society with these kinds of fractures continuing unaddressed, continuing unresolved. But so is true at every other level. I've mentioned that these patterns exist at the level of families, individual families, subgroups, nonprofit organizations, local communities. I think the big question is, do we value community? That's actually the first question. Before we can answer how do you build it, do you actually value it? Do all of us actually value it? So let's sit with that for just a minute. If we do value it, then there's some beautiful things about it, right? One, let's look at us, because this is also a community and a place where we are building and nurturing. We have intergenerational community, multi-generational community. That's a big deal. That means a lot just in and of itself. One of the best books I've read on generational differences is that there's a phrase in there that each subsequent generation literally grew up in a different country. So you have to do cross-cultural work all the time. You have to do cross-cultural work in any cross-generation communication because you're literally crossing significant cultural barriers when you're talking to somebody of a different generation than you. That requires effort. But here's the joy. Think of the joy that we feel just hearing a baby sneeze earlier in today's service. There's joy in that. Seeing the little ones asking me what my favorite color is, there's joy in that, right? So when we can find ways to bridge these differences, there is beauty. There is beauty. Now, that's just generational difference. We can add in socioeconomic, racial, ability-based differences, geographic differences. There's all kinds of differences, and the larger the community, the broader it is, the more complex it is, the more work there is to do to be present in a good way across all of those differences for the sake of the beauty that we can find when we do that well. That's how we build community, is even when it's hard, by reminding ourselves of why we're engaging in that commitment. There is something beautiful to be had when we find a way of being together across difference. Now, here's the number one problem that is getting in our way of effectively building community as a society, as a culture, as a nation, broadly and locally, at the more local level too. So many people are convinced that their self-worth is based in them being right about anything. You can define what the issue is. Pick one. There's a lot of people who their primary goal is wanting to be affirmed that they are right. This speaks volumes, I would say, to self-esteem issues in our culture and our society. Profound self-esteem issues that need to be worked on, but I'm not a cultural level psychologist. I don't have that training. I don't know how one works at that at the level of culture. But at the level of individuals, drop it. My most loving and caring advice I can offer each and every one of us, drop it. Drop the need to have other people affirm that you are right. You don't need it. You know you're right about whatever it is. Why can't that be enough? Let other people have their truth, their reality, their experience. Don't negate them. Give them the same respect and dignity that you want for your own position, your own experience, your own needs. Grant others exactly that same dignity and that same respect. Don't negate them. Don't try to convince them they're wrong. Don't try to change them in the same way that you don't want them trying to change you. That was more than a little reflection there, but this is whoever offered that question, this is the need. This is the critical thing that we are way off track on as a culture and as a people. So thank you. Thank you for a very important question. We're going to go to our online chat, and we have a question that's been submitted there. Do I have any thoughts about healing our ancestors? I wonder if we help heal the pain of ancestors, if it will help the pain and conflict people are now in. I'm speaking about intergenerational trauma. So this is a beautiful field of inquiry, reflection, discernment, intergenerational trauma. If you're not familiar with the field, I encourage you to do some Googling, do some learning. There's a lot of good literature about this. The basic idea and premise is that, well, I'll use my own family as an example. On my matrilineal side, on my mother's side of the family, my grandfather was a refugee, and his whole family. They were refugees from Pakistan at the time that India and Pakistan became independent. They were Hindus living in what became modern-day Pakistan. So if you've seen the movie Gandhi, with the huge population transfers, my mother's side of the family was a part of that huge shifting in populations. Many people were murdered. There was a huge danger in those shifting of populations, huge uncertainty. My family didn't physically lose anybody, but they lost everything. They lost livelihood, they lost the property they owned. They left with only their lives and had to begin a new life in a place that they had never lived in before, as essentially transplants and refugees. So you go through an experience like that, there's no way that the imprint of that experience doesn't affect the generation that occurred to, right? My grandfather had like lifelong depression, my maternal grandfather. He was deeply impacted by the losses and the trauma that him and his family experienced. Now, you've got in that family then somebody holding deep, profound depression and an interpretation of life based on that refugee experience. They pass that worldview, that perspective, on to the next generation, right? You can't help but help your children see the world somewhat the way you see the world. It's just natural. Kids look up to us. They develop their own perspective, but a lot of it is informed by their caregivers. So it's in this way that one generation's experience moves down the lineage to subsequent generations. So we're getting to a question about generational healing. In a lot of the traditions in which I study spiritually, I practice, I learn, I grow, the idea is, it's a very strong idea that when in our current lives, whenever any of us engage in the work of healing and transformation and growth, we're doing it not just for ourselves, we're doing it for 7 generations prior and 7 generations to come. Now think of that, right? Okay, so if I do whatever healing work that may be needed because of that refugee trauma experience that was on my maternal side of the family, I can help create some healing around that, around my family's experiences of colonialism, lack of power in the midst of profound societal change. I can maybe create some healing so I'm not passing on to my kids some learned or inculcated ways of thinking about being human or the world. That's healing in and of itself. And included in that is this idea that the healing works backwards through earlier generations, through your lineage of ancestors. So I think ultimately this work of healing and growth and personal transformation, it's worth doing in and of itself, irrespective of what one believes that, well, I'm making things better for the future generations that come after me, or I'm helping heal the generations before me. Whether you believe that or not, this work of healing and growth is absolutely worth doing for you yourself. And I view, for me personally, being human has been a lifelong journey of learning and growth. I kind of almost view it as a certain part of my experience is taking a master class on me, on Manish. What does it mean to be Manish? And not only Manish, to transcend that one small label to the ultimate essence of being human and what we're each called to do and be. Move with that. Always follow that calling. Your own inside will push you towards the growth you need. It is relentless. It will not let you get away with not doing it. The things that are hardest for you, it'll keep bringing it up. You will find yourself in the same situation with the same dynamics over and over again because some part of you is pushing you to move in and learn and grow around that particular thing. So the other thing I'd say I've learned is you can resist, but you can't hide. That energy inside of us that propels us towards greater possibility and personal growth, it will always move us towards the thing that is next, the thing that we have not yet examined, and it won't give up. It'll keep finding those kinds of situations until we engage in the work that it's gently trying to invite us to engage in. So the easier thing is to kind of go with the flow. That thing's come up 3 times now. Maybe I should dig into it and look into it. Maybe it's not only about the other person, maybe it's also about me, how I deal with these types of situations. There comes the possibility. When we can see that it's not an external problem, but that we may have a part of the puzzle too, and then we engage in that work, our insides, our soul, if you will, sings. Every part of us wants to flourish and learn and grow. So, and in that, the beauty in that is that it supports future generations and it supports the generations behind us too, if you believe in that as a philosophical, theological concept. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. This is an interesting question. It strikes me that our congregation is very wide and educated. What can be done to include others? It depends what you mean by that. So in June, I spoke a little bit about this, and I'll say a little more since it's coming up in a slightly different way. So what do we mean by including others? So first we have to understand in the religious, spiritual, this type of community landscape of the United States, the vast majority of communities, congregations, societies, they are homogenous along the lines of race and class. Almost always. Almost always there's a predominant demographic. So what you're seeing here is not atypical for how religious, spiritual life in the United States works. That doesn't mean we can't aspire to better, to different, and we should. Now, I don't believe that the goal is we want more brown and black faces, how do we go out and find them, and then somehow force them to be here. That's not the goal. That's not the goal. But the goal is through our living example, through our modeling of how we are in community together, we create enough spaciousness that when folks who might identify as brown or black or other identities that reflect diversity show up, they find enough room for them. They find enough space of the heart. They find enough inclusivity in the way that we are together. And it's important to recognize that there's different amounts of work that different people holding different identities might have to do around that. Here's a great example. So some of you know I've been a Unitarian Universalist for going on 25 years for sure. I think I must be pushing maybe 30 soon, but something like that, let's say 25 years. For somebody like me who grew up in a Hindu temple community, to show up in one of our communities, it doesn't matter to me whether you call it a church or a congregation, that is still all Judeo-Christian, that all the languaging and concepting of that, it's still very Christian, Judeo-Christian, Jewish or Christian. The way that you have someone like me up here talking like this while you are this is the structure and format of a traditional Christian church or a Jewish synagogue. This is not how we worship in temples. It's also not how we gather together in many indigenous styles of community. So we have something called a sermon. That's also profoundly Judeo-Christian. We have something called pews that you are seated in, right? Also a Judeo-Christian. And it's not just about the languaging, it's actually also about the format. This format of sitting here and viewing expertise in front of you in this way is very, very old-timey Christian, actually, let's be honest about it. It's very old-timey Christian. So, and yet we're not. And yet the structure absolutely is. So notice that. So somebody of my background who grew up Hindu, there's huge, like just visual barriers. When I was first attending one of our communities in Washington, D.C., it was a lot of inner work for me just to stick with it. I had to keep looking at the content, the lyrics, the words of the hymns. Okay, but it's not Jewish or Christian. I'm not converting. This is Unitarian Universalist. The content is something different, but the overt structures are actually quite traditional and not as progressive as our content. So notice that. And then I think also even just on the content front, how do we create enough spaciousness? Some of you I think have appropriately noticed that we rotate through a variety of styles and techniques, right? So there are certain Sundays some of us learn and experience our humanity through sacred rituals, through sacred ceremonies of a variety of kinds. We did one in June called Bridging. We did one in May called Flower Communion. For some of you, that's very important. It's central to your experience of being human. That's one of the types of ways of being together we visit. Some of us are intellectually oriented. It's one of the ways we periodically visit. Some of us are very heart-oriented, experience-oriented. We also include those types of experiences and center them and showcase them in our time together as community. We visit a variety of ways of being together as one way of creating spaciousness. I think there's a lot more we Unitarian Universalists writ large could do to create even more spaciousness, but there's some of that's harder and longer term work to do. So I appreciate the question, and for those who asked that or are wondering that, please hold in mind that it's not just content, it's also structure. It's also form, tone, vibe, little bit of the languaging, but actually languaging is not as big of a deal as, because we learn how to translate as UUs. It's an essential UU skill. We use the word pew and I know what we mean. We mean chair or a row, right? Like we're not really confused about how we're using the term pew. So we do the translating. I'm less concerned about the words, but how do we create the spaciousness of feeling? How do we create the spaciousness of structure in addition to the spaciousness of content? That is some of our work to do. This is the time that we have for questions today. Know that we always read everything. I personally read every question that is submitted. We work them into future services, ones that rise up as being, kind of collective interest. And you might find in a future newsletter that we answer one or two as well. I occasionally try to do that as well. Thank you so much. I love you all. Participating in this type of service with you is such a joy and a privilege for me. Our community consistently asks really, really critical and important questions about what it means to be human, what it means to be together with one another as people. And I'm very grateful for each of you and for the opportunity to be in reflection like this. We're now going to join together in singing our closing hymn. If you turn to your teal hymnals, it's Blue Boat Home, number 1064. Please rise in body or spirit. Dear ones, hold dear in your heart that longing, the longing for a greater sense of community that we heard about today, that longing to be with others across difference of life experience, race, culture, belief, age, all of it, and so much more. These are beautiful longings that speak to who we are as Unitarian Universalists, what we're committed to, what we're trying to bring alive in this community and our wider world. Go forth knowing that you're companioned by this ship of gorgeous human beings who hold that value as dearly as you do. Go forth, bring it alive in your words and deeds in the week ahead, with love, with care, being held by this beloved community until we are together again. May it be so. Amen.